Hello and welcome back. I hope that you're doing well. I thought it'd be interesting to take you all through some of my older sketchbooks, starting with this one. I have been drawing and painting for most of my life, on and off here and there, but I only started really diving into it and studying and taking it seriously, if you want to use that word, in 2021. And it all started with this sketchbook. I have filled quite a few since then, along with some other sketchbooks, but it all started here, and this is an art creation sketchbook by Royal Talons. I've done an in-depth review on this kind of sketchbook already, and I've filled, I think, 6 of these so far, and I used all of that experience in that review to go over all of the different materials that it can handle and not handle. And I'll leave a link to that up there. I'll try and find out any information I can about this sticker and who made it and leave that in the description. I got it as a present, so I'm not sure where it came from. Starting off, as you can see, it's very blank. It's very different from how I do my sketchbooks now, which is interesting looking back. Now I write the dates that I started and ended on this page, and when I'm starting the sketchbook, I write a list of aims, goals, subjects, and anything that I want to focus on in the journey of the sketchbook. And then the rest of it I will fill in with things that I collect over my time using the sketchbook. But for this sketchbook, for whatever reason, I start here. And this was from January 2021 to September 2021. And the themes, I didn't have too many. I mainly wanted to work on building a sketchbooking practice and really just start my journey of learning fundamentals. So we have learning perspective and construction, animal construction, human anatomy, head anatomy, and construction. So it was very much fundamental based, and there is, for the head anatomy, there is the 100 heads challenge, or the start of it, in this sketchbook, I believe. And before we get into the sketches, I do want to just give a little disclaimer that when I talk about any of my previous sketches in this sketchbook or future sketchbooks and talk about my skill level, either now or in the past, I do so with full love. I do not say anything in a demeaning way, either to myself or to anyone else. And just know that when I'm talking about my journey, I'm talking about my journey and my skill level. And I do it because I want to figure out where I can improve. So I look back at these sketchbooks and see my journey so far and where I've improved, where I still need to improve. And when I'm looking at current sketches and paintings and stuff, I also use that to figure out where I'm going to go in the future as well. And it's a very, very important thing to me. And with that out the way, let's dive in. So again, very blank. I was very nervous starting this sketchbook, and I just decided to skip the first page. I don't really do that anymore, but I did at the time, and that helped me get going. So here we have caterpillars. And I'll occasionally lean the sketchbook up so that you can see it a little bit better without the glare, because there is a lot of graphite in this sketchbook. But we started off here with some caterpillars, and I'm not super sure what kind of pencil I was using for these. It could have been the Kohinoor B to start off with, and I'm not sure why I did caterpillars, but they interested me at the time. So we have the puss moth caterpillar on this page and the oleander hawk moth on this page. And then here we have some perspective studying. So we have some simplified landscapes here. So you can see that I was drawing some lines to figure out the placement of things. And then over here we have some simple shape exercises in perspective, which I did a lot of, and I still sometimes do to keep up with my fundamentals practice. here we have the start of some drawer box exercises. So when I was learning to draw in the sketchbook, I was using drawer box. And at the time I was also using blank sheets of printer paper to do a lot of practice as well alongside the sketchbook. So things like the 250 box challenge I did on sheets of paper rather than inside the sketchbook. But here we have some simple construction exercises where I was drawing herons using simple shapes to construct them. And this was just in ballpoint pen. The same thing here, but studying robins. And I used Drawbox because it's a free resource that was very handy to me at the time, and it was important for me to understand how to build things from simple shapes, and then also to figure out how to put those simple shapes into perspective as well. And here we have a very, very important and special page to me. It is the page of the Stair of Doom, and here is pretty much the baseline when I am showing myself my journey of learning to draw animals, but especially learning to draw cats. If you've seen any of my draw with me's, sketch with me's, you'll probably be able to see how far I've come in the last couple years since this page. And I remember at the time doing this page that it was a very difficult page for me, speaking of doing it at the time, because I came face to face with how much I needed to learn, and also how my skill level was nowhere near where I wanted it to be at the time. So I remember this page being a particular struggle for me, especially when it came to the Stair of Doom. But now I look back at the Stair of Doom with endearment, and I wrote that at the time, the Stair of Doom. And I use this page whenever I'm laying out multiple sketches over the years to see my growth and to kind of just check myself. And I usually put this at the start when I'm looking at things like my animal drawing or big cat drawing in general. These are domestic cats though. And it's actually interesting. I did a sketch this morning. I'll see if I can find it. In a Stillman and Byrne Epsilon sketchbook. So this is a snow leopard that I sketched from reference as a warm-up this morning. So whenever I am trying to evaluate my trajectory and how I'm doing, I always do it by comparing myself to myself. So I'll put multiple things that I've done over the years in a line in chronological order and see my highs and lows and where I still need to improve, where I have been improving, and all of that lovely stuff. That's a bit of a tangent, but I feel like it's important because this spread is very important to me. And here we have some more cat drawings. And these are all in ballpoint pen as well. So some of the things that I was struggling with at the time were perspective, of course. Line confidence was a really, really big one, as you can see with all of these scratchy, uncertain marks, and also just building up the construction as well was something that I realized that I needed to practice. And here's a really, really good page, an important page for me as well. This page was a learning experience, not just in pushing through bad drawings, bad being relative, of course. I'm just speaking about my own skill level, as I was mentioning earlier. This here was an important page for me because these both were done in the same day. And it was an important exercise for me to not just push through the bad sketches, but also how you can have highs and lows even in the same day. You can do a really good drawing and then the next one doesn't come out as skilled in whatever area, or it can happen the opposite way around, as happened here. And it was an important learning experience for me to just realize that sketches happen and they can be any level of success, whatever success might be for you on your journey, but you can just keep going with them. And that was a really important thing for me. And I wrote here, bad drawings happen when you're learning. Remember, you need to do thousands to improve. Fill the sketchbook with bad learning if you have to. So these were all still construction exercises for drawer box, all in ballpoint pen. And sometimes I wrote little notes to figure out why certain sketches weren't coming out looking right. Was it the placement of the eyes, the perspective? Were they coming out flat like this? So as you can see, I was struggling quite a bit with some animals. Here with the camels, I feel like I was getting a little bit more comfortable when it came to camels. And I was starting to understand some of the simple forms in perspective, but I was still dealing with things like perspective and also just line quality and line confidence. Here's some more. So like I said, these are all for a drawer box. Here we have some graphite perspective studies of cubes and cuboids. I still do exercises like these where you're intersecting them as well, cutting out and adding, which isn't really what's happening on these ones. Some more perspective here. This is a really fun perspective exercise as well, which is creating a perspective grid with 2 vanishing points and then creating a bunch of frames and then drawing cubes in those frames using the 2 vanishing points. More drawer box here. So we've got some goats. Again, similar things coming up: perspective, construction, line confidence. More goats. And probably some sheep as well. These would have all have been done from photo reference for the studying. I do like how the pose of this one came out. I feel like I got the overlapping of forms really well there. And some more here. I still really like this head. I was just trying to focus on, again, building the simple shapes, so like the sausages for arms. And again, trying to get like spheres for the tips of the feet on the lizard. The frogs here. I love this frog still. I don't know if it's a frog or a toad, but I love him. He just looks so proud and refined, like he needs a little crown. I love him still. But you can see here that I was also trying to break things down into cubes, spheres, cylinders, your simple shapes. Trying to understand how to construct things, not necessarily knowing how to, but trying to understand. And then this page full of horrifying monsters was an exercise in making hybrids using the animals from previous exercises, which is why we ended up with this interesting creature of a frog camel and a camel tortoise head and whatever this is. It wasn't an exercise in like creature design, it was just one in taking a part of an animal and then merging it to another part in order to just show you how construction works. And here we have some how to draw exercises. I'm just going to take a sip of water, one moment. There we go. So here we have some exercises from the book How to Draw by Scott Robertson. And a lot of these were things like mirroring and breaking down planes into smaller forms, intersecting forms. So this is back to draw a box exercises again, and intersecting of simple shapes like this is still something that I do to warm up because it's an important fundamental. I really struggled with a lot of these exercises to start off with because I didn't quite have a thorough understanding of the vanishing points, and also trying to view the shapes in your mind as you're drawing them was a learning curve. And I remember that spheres intersecting into things and boxes, multiple boxes intersecting into things, were something that I was having an issue with. As you can see here, I wasn't quite sure where to have that intersection. And again, see, not confident about box intersections from imagination because I was doing all of those from imagination. So what I decided to do, since I wasn't finding much confidence in those exercises, was I looked at pyrite, since they naturally form into cubes, so I could use it as reference, but I still couldn't quite understand how they were intersecting. And so like the reference didn't have very obvious perspective, so this ended up looking flat and skewed, but that's also mixed with the fact that I didn't understand the perspective and intersections that well as well at the time. More drawer box. This was about the time where I moved away from doing drawer box, which is here. So drawer box is a wonderful resource, and I have nothing against drawer box. I just found that by this point the lessons weren't clicking with me, and it wasn't the practice. I do think that the practice side of it is very useful, and no matter what resource you use to learn to draw, you do actually still need to put the practice in rather than just reading a bunch or watching a bunch of resources. So like here I said, I will say, however, that I love the drawer box challenges. One simple concept, lots of practice, plus the concept being explained. So I really liked how the concepts were explained in the challenges, but I didn't like how certain things were explained and taught in the lesson section. It just wasn't clicking with me, and I ended up finding that other resources were better for me to learn from. But the actual way of practicing with drawer box, I feel like, was really good. And that's an important part of your own journey and your own individual learning if you're self-teaching and finding your own resources, is you need to try and figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. What works for one person isn't going to work for everyone. And here we have some more perspective exercises, the cone of vision. This is probably either Marshall Vanderf or How to Draw, possibly. If not, it might be Modern Day James, because I did start moving to those three. I tried to do like a shelf in perspective, but I ended up putting the vanishing point way too far away, and it ended up making it really skewed. More construction of things, more how to draw. All of these were how to draw exercises. More how to draw book. And more how to draw. When you're drawing, you don't necessarily, unless you're drawing very technical things, you don't have to plot all of this out. But doing these exercises helped me gain an understanding of being able to position these things in my head, if that makes sense. It's the same thing with mirroring curves in these exercises. You're not necessarily going to plot the curves out like this to figure out where it needs to go, but by doing these exercises, you'll kind of have a more intuitive understanding of how something should curve in perspective. And of course, it's something that I do need to keep going back to and improving at as well. Some studies from Paint My Photo. So there's a reference website called Paint My Photo, which you can use for drawing. And I was having trouble with the pen that I was using here because it was skipping a lot. And I also had trouble because some of the photos I was drawing from were starting to warp towards the edges, so the boxes, like the box of that balcony, didn't quite make sense. It was curving in like a slightly warped way, mixed with my own understanding or lack of understanding of perspective at the time. It ended up messing with me a bit, so I ended up just ignoring the photo and drawing it out as if it was in perspective from my imagination. Here we have a mixture of cylinders from imagination. This was probably before I did the cylinder challenge. I did the box challenge of 250 boxes while I was doing the draw box lessons, and I believe I did the cylinder challenge after I finished the lessons, or after I stopped doing the lessons. So yeah, this pen has an awful skipping problem. I did not enjoy using that pen at all. And as you can see, I was still struggling a bit with drawing animals. I think that was from imagination as well. More cylinders from perspective, in perspective. And here we have the start of head drawing. So soon there should be the 100 heads challenge popping up. This wasn't part of the challenge. And I think this was done using a Blackwing Pearl, which is, I've got one over here, this kind of pencil. Blackwing Pearl. Those are the only Blackwings I own. Heron. So this was done with a red colour pencil underneath and then graphite. And then this was done with grey Ecoline marker probably, and then brush pen. This would have been from Paint My Photo, and as you can see there's some graphite underneath. I did an undersketch in graphite and then went over that with micron pens, just to try and really put my perspective studies into practice. Rotating cubes. Here we have the start of the 100 heads challenge. So I did all 100 heads in this sketchbook and another sketchbook, but I didn't do them in 10 days. So I did 100 heads, but I spaced it out a little bit. And this was the first 10. So you gain a very good understanding of the highs and lows of my sketching at the time with these. And I definitely had difficulty with certain head angles and also with proportions of features and with how I simplified some features into symbols still. A very common thing when you're starting to draw is that you draw symbols rather than what's actually there. And you can definitely see that I was still doing that. And these were the next 10. There's a lot of graphite here, so I'll try and move it so that you can see a little bit better. There we go. These weren't part of the challenge. These two were from photo reference, and then these were studies of artists. At the time, I wasn't ever really planning on showing this sketchbook to anyone. Now, whenever I do studies of artists, I always write the name, and I believe after this page, I write the name of the artist I'm studying. I believe that these two are Audra or Claire, and then this was me trying to do like another version of the sketch. And I tried to understand the head angle a bit more by redrawing it here for that one. There's 5 more for the challenge. Again, you can sort of see the highs and lows of the time. I really struggled with this one. I don't think it wants to focus. There we go. Yeah, I really struggled with that one at the time, and also that one. These are all morpho studies. Apart from that, that's just a study from photo reference. Morpho books have been a really important part of building my anatomy knowledge for human anatomy. These are morpho here and here. And over here we have some eye studies. More of the 100 Heads challenge. So we have 10 more here. And I was starting to notice common issues that I was running into. So I wrote here, straight on eyes. I was having issues with straight on eyes, upward and downward tilting, 3D eye simplification. So I knew that I was definitely having an issue with the eyes. I don't think that I picked up at the time that I was also having issues with proportions. These are all morpho studies. Because again, what I was doing was I was doing the challenge, figuring out areas I was struggling with, and then studying those areas. A flamingo, I believe this was done with Blackwing. More morpho. We have Loomis stuff here. And possibly some stuff that I picked up from watching What's Atelier videos off of YouTube at the time. And there's a study as well as the artist name. I started writing the artists' names. Morpho, morpho, and then warm-up drawing. So I was doing warm-ups of hatching marks, building values. Some more drawings from photo reference here. These 3 heads are from photo reference. And then all of those eyes are studies from TB Choi. So studies from photo reference, and then the eyes are artist studies. Lane Brown, and then some further studies of parts of that. Those are from photo reference, applying, that was applying morpho, that was trying to study from reference. And then this was a value study of outside. More morpho studies, rotating cubes from imagination. And then this is modifying simple shapes, so slicing off bits of shapes, beveling edges, removing sections, adding sections, slicing shapes in half. Overhand practice with the black wing, which if you don't know what that is, that's drawing like this, overhand. Lots of overhand drawing there. This is a study of cuppa. I love their art style, especially when they're drawing animals. Also their figures as well, I love. And I tried to apply what I learnt from this by doing a study of a torso. Sorry for the cut there, but there's like a journal entry here and it's got some personal information in it that I don't want to reveal. So these were all done with 2H pencil, which is why they're so light. And I'd seen one of those boxes where people sell things that they've made or grown, and they had a bunch of homemade jams and honey. And so I was trying to draw that from memory and perspective, and then draw jars in perspective as well. Here we have more morpho, warm-up drawing, and then we have some exercises with simple shapes again, removing and adding to them. This was for the Final Fantasy XIV weapon design competition where I submitted a scholar weapon. And I was just coming up with a bunch of different things that I could do, design ideas and all of that stuff. Some more morpho studies here, and then here I was just trying to do heads from imagination. These 3 heads are from photo reference, and then I was trying to figure out all sorts of different ways of drawing mouths, and some of those will have been from photo reference that I was simplifying myself, and then some of them would have been from how artists draw mouths. Another Cooper study. More simple shapes and more heads. This is another study of an artist, and that was the only handle I could find under the image at the time. It's ASHJXC. More drawing of eyes and facial features. Another drawing from photo reference. This was modern day James. Weird angles suck. Drawing cubes from perspective for like the head shapes. Drawing heads from different angles and just focusing on the head, so ignoring the hair. More simple shape warm-ups. More morpho heads. Morpho figure. Heads. Shapes. Heron, this would have been in Blackwing Pearl. And then those were from photo reference, and I struggled with the mouth, so I blew it up and redrew it larger to try and understand it a bit better. These were for the scholar weapon. I was trying to figure out if I wanted to have anything dangling down. And then more faces from photo reference. She reminds me of like if you made Rukia an adult and then made her realistic, or a little bit more realistic. I don't know why. I think it's just the hair. I think the hair reminds me of Rukia for some reason. And then more eye studies, another head study. This is all morpho studying, trying to figure out where different facial features were showing up in perspective is, and then more faces. I believe these were using Earth's World. This was when I first came across Earth's World, I believe. More faces. And then I think that face was from Imagination, and that face was from Imagination. Some scholar things. I didn't end up going with this design in the end, which is funny because one of the designs that ended up getting further into the competition kind of looks like this. Then we've got more morpho stuff, and then a hippo because you gotta have a hippo. Why not have a hippo? Even between the start of the sketchbook and this hippo, you can see a massive improvement in my line quality and confidence and just construction and everything as well. More heads. These were both using mechanical pencil. These were all designs for the scholar weapon. More designing for the scholar weapon. That was designing for the scholar weapon as well. I really struggled with that head and trying to get like a hooked nose, but I ended up smooshing her face way in when the nose should have been further out. So I redid the head down here. So there's no need to worry, you can always redo it. And then I studied more from Morpho. Morpho, all of that page is Morpho. So again, whenever I was struggling with something, I just went back and I studied. More of the 100 heads challenge here. Again, highs and lows. And more of the 100 heads. I don't think I counted those because I did them from Imagination. That was from a statue, this one. And that's it. The last page I use for swatching. And you can see that a lot of it ended up rubbing off. So yeah, there we go. I hope that you found this sketchbook tour interesting, and it's kind of an origin sketchbook almost in a way. Let me know in the description, in the comments, how you have been doing with your sketchbook practice lately and what your favourite sketchbook is at the moment. I'd probably say just for studying, art creation is still one of my favourites, but I have definitely been enjoying the Stillman & Byrne Epsilon lately. And if you want to see more of my sketchbook journey and how it's ended up changing over the years, let me know if you want to see more of my sketchbooks. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!